It's been about a month since my last parawing update, and I pointed out in that one that I had some decision making to be done, and I came to the conclusion that I wanted to try a different brand, switched from BRM over to the Pocket Rocket from Ozone, and I initially ordered a 1.9 and a 2.4, but after waiting for about a month, no 1.9s became available, so when I had the option to accept the shipment, I elected to change from the 1.9 and 2.4 to getting a 2.4 and a 3. And in the days to come, I'll dive into that a little bit deeper, but I want to talk more in this, quick video about what I've been doing in the last month and how that transitioned into my first day on the Pocket Rockets. So, again, to recap, I ride the AFS Silks. Those are an 8 aspect ratio foil, and I don't have a super strong desire to switch to a high aspect foil in order to get better glides. I've always really looked for really, really good swell, steep faces. I like to surf them. I feel like the high aspect foils are really good when you're doing longer downwind runs and you need to buy time through dead sections. That's where I feel like those foils are amazing, but they don't surf as well on the really good stuff. So I elect to ride the silks, and I want the best turns every single chance I can get. So over the last month, historically, I never was really pushing myself to do the longest flagged out glides possible on the silks. I always wanted to kind of do like, hey, here's this 5-minute section of river, and I just want to nail that. But over the last month, thinking about the parawings, I decided, okay, let's just see how hard I can push myself and how long I can get my glides. So this is a really cool session that I had as part of my training over the last month. This is a Silk 650, so this is the little one. And this is the first time I've ever done 50 miles nonstop without falling in the water. So for me, this felt like a pretty big breakthrough moment. I think maybe other people are doing this a lot where they have these big long sessions and they never ever fall. But for me, doing 50 miles without falling in the water felt like a huge achievement. And in that, I was constantly pushing the 650, which is an epic foil, but it is not easy to link swell on. I was pushing myself really hard to stay flagged out for as long as possible. And that's where you see some of these longer. This is staying flagged out to here. And then when I would finally be at a point where I was about to come off foil, I would give up and then I would come back upwind and I would reset. So with the 650, I was able to push myself to getting about 7 minutes nonstop on the 650 flagged out, which feels really good. But consequently, then when I went back to the Silk 850 or the Silk 1050, historically I was kind of a 15-minute max. Like 5 is really what the sweet spot was because that's where the best swell is. There's usually a 5-minute section of awesome swell. And then 15 minutes would be more like, oh, I did it because it happened. But after doing this session on the 650, suddenly my runs on the 850 pushed to 20 minutes. And then when I would pull out the 1050, I was doing 30 minutes flagged out without using any wing assist. So this session and pushing myself on this day and in this way, I feel like really expanded my abilities as a foiler to get the most out of the silks and to be able to figure out how to get through those dead sections in preparation for the parawing. And one thing that I did change in my foil kit was this. This is the Ultra Glide 41 from AFS. And you can tell this thing is very high aspect. It's 123 square centimeters. This with the Silk 1050, I feel pretty much invincible now. Like every time I flag out with the 1050 and that tail, I'm just untouchable. I can just go forever in the gorge, I think. I don't like it as much with the 850 or the 650. It kind of messes up with their turns. It works, but you're giving up the flavor of surf foil too much. Whereas the 1050, you still feel like you're on a surf foil with that. So anyways, this week, the Pocket Rockets showed up, and I want to show two different sessions. One of these sessions is me on a 4-meter AA wing with the Silk 850. And then the other session is my very first session on the 3-meter Pocket Rocket with the Silk 1050. So we'll look at these two sessions side by side. So here's one, and here's the other. So the question I have as I flip back and forth and we look at these, which session is this? Is this a wing or is this a parawing session? Is this a wing or is this a parawing session? Got it? You made your decision? Okay. So right here, this session is the 4-meter AA session. And how can I tell this session apart? Right here, do you see this angle, this upwind angle that's almost 90 degrees? This is pretty common to me when I'm winging. I get these 90-degree upwind angles. Whereas here with the Pocket Rocket, not quite 90. And some of these jibes, you can tell, especially this side's jibe, I really was learning how to fly the Pocket Rocket, especially on this side. And my jibes would be very big and very drawn out. Whereas when we come back over here, you can see a jibe is much tighter, smaller loops on these jibes. So I just want to point out that I've got 1,000 miles of experience on this specific wing. And this was my very first session on the Pocket Rocket. That's really freaking good in my opinion. The fact that this is my 4th day parawinging right here and is my very first session on the Pocket Rocket parawing, that's huge. Like that's crazy to me. So while this isn't quite a perfect match for what I'm able to do here on a wing that I'm really good with, I just want to say the potential is obviously there, and I'm only going to get better with these things. So let's look a little bit closer at my first day on the Pocket Rocket. So this is that session that I was just showing and comparing. And here you can see my notes. First go on the 3-meter Pocket Rocket was butter. Pretty good upwind angles and no issues with tangles and retracts. I did not try any packaways since the swell was so poor, but it was good to feel things out. 23 knots felt like a sure thing on the 3-meter as the takeoff performance isn't quite as grunty as the Ka'a. However, the upwind and ability to handle gusts was dramatically better. So that really sums it up on that very first session. The Ka'a pulls straight downwind, really, really grunty, straight downwind, and it gets you up on foil really well. Whereas the Pocket Rocket, being high aspect, pulls across the wind. It very naturally wants to fly and like take you upwind while you're even just sitting in the water. So the takeoff is definitely more nuanced. I think I'll have to learn a little bit, and it doesn't feel anywhere near as grunty as the Ka'as did. But all of the other things I thought were really good. And if we look down here, so sometimes you see these tracks from people, but they don't tell the whole story. This is the actual story, though, right here. So this speed readout, when you see it drop to 0, that means I fell off foil, and you can kind of see how long it took me to get back on foil. So here I fell off at 6.5 minutes, and I was back on at 9.5 minutes. So there was maybe a 3-minute sit in the water there. And when you look at this, you can see I got out very first session with the Pocket Rocket, trying to figure out the takeoff, fell in, trying to figure out, fell in, but then all of a sudden you see like, oh wow, look at this, I'm just sessioning here. This is, your shirt, your clothes are all dry, you're totally just having a good session, and this is all doing repetitive, collapse the wing down, ride swell, throw it back out. And that's a big difference with this one. I've been actually throwing the pocket rocket back out in front of me, um, as opposed to just dropping the ka'a. So you can see here with this session, for my first try on the pocket rockets, I thought this was awesome. At the end of this, so this was about 23 knots with the Silk 1050. At the end of this session, I just wanted to come back in and I wanted to change. I was so confident in the pocket rocket that I decided to put a foil on that I hadn't. I demoed that foil once many months ago. It's the Enduro 900, and I just wanted to give it another shot. And because this is a really poor swell location, this is a spot where it is more challenging for the silks. You can still see here that I'm getting these downwind runs on the silk, but I felt like the confidence I had in the pocket rocket made it possible for me to go and try a new foil even when I'm using a new wing or parawing, whatever you want to say. So if we switch over to same day, just went in, changed gear, came back out. So this one, you can see I definitely had more confidence in going downwind, and I was trying some different things. But if we zoom in on this real quick, you can definitely see the upwind angles are not as good, and there's a couple different variables happening with that. I oftentimes feel like I don't go upwind as well on high aspect foils. It could be because I'm really confident on my medium aspect surf foils, but this felt like I was losing my upwind a little bit. But then also, when I started this session, it was still reading an average of 23 knots, but by the end it was showing averaging 18 knots. So if we look at my notes here, second pocket rocket session, and the wind slowly faded on this one. By the end of the session, it was averaging 18 knots, and I will say it felt pretty dicey. I got stuck downwind for a long time at one point, as I just couldn't get myself back on foil. There seems to be a trick to stalling the rocket into the wind window to generate a boost, but I need more practice. Also, after the long sit in the water, my hands got a little pruny, and I had a hard time retracting the rocket. The lines felt sticky in my hands, and as a result, it was difficult to get a full retract on the 3 meter. It may be necessary to shorten the lines a bit. So what I mean by this with the retract here, just to cover that right away, it almost felt like my hands got really moist, because if we scroll down here, this is the whole story, right? So we see these lines and it looks like it was just like a session going up and down the river. But look at this section right here. This, we're talking about, I fell in the water at 42 minutes and I didn't get up until the 1 hour mark. So it was almost a 20-minute sit in the water. And if you can see the little black dot on the actual GPS readout, scrolling around, and I'm just fishing back and forth in the water here trying to find some wind so I can get back up. And this is again where that grunt of the ka'a versus the pocket rocket is very different. So right in here I got stuck. But yeah, so my hands got really pruny, and then when I kept trying to retract the lines after that, I would only get part of the way up, and maybe it was where the little joints are in the bridle. It just felt like it was really sticking in my hand, and I started having to do a 2-part pull in order to retract the 3 meter pocket rocket, which was not the end of the world, but I definitely would not want a size bigger. The 3 meter for me, my ape index is +2, so that means when you measure your fingertip to fingertip wingspan, I'm 5'6", and +2 means my fingertip to fingertip is 5'8", so that's my wingspan. Retracting the 3 meter felt like I was right there at probably my maximum, and I would say just a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think it's good to be trying to retract something with your joints fully out at the end like that. It just feels like that could be a repetitive kind of tweak on your shoulder or something. So all this to say that my first day on the Pocket Rockets was phenomenal. I tried both my silk foil in this session, had a blast, very, very successful, loved it. Went in, switched to a high aspect to try something different. Didn't see a huge benefit to switching to the high aspect for my riding style, but it did make the dead sections a little bit easier to go through. But altogether, I just want to say, I think that the Pocket Rocket for me is definitely going to be the right call. I think the 3 meter is going to be something that I'm going to be able to use more often than I expected, because the 3 meter has a lot less grunt than the Ka's did. But I will also say, man, I just never felt. I think the peak gusts on this day were 32, 33 knots. And holy, the Pocket Rocket was always in control, always confidence inspiring, easy to go upwind. I was never scared. I was scared of the Ka. I was like, I felt like I was gonna rip my shoulder out of the socket with it. I felt like it was consistently getting just pinged out of my hands and going flying downwind. I just could not really session in place with that thing. Whereas with the Pocket Rocket, wow, I just instantly comfortable, instantly feeling like hooking in is super easy, driving upwind, super doable. The main things that I think I'll have to work on is just flying it through jibes. It's not quite as easy as the Ka was, because the Ka pulls downwind so much that when you go to jibe and you have to drift the kite through that wind window, it's much more natural. Whereas it's easy to basically foil underneath the Pocket Rocket and then get all kind of mixed up on it. But yeah, I'm rambling a little bit. I wanted to just kind of get this, these notes down and get this experience out there, and just say that after one single day on the Pocket Rockets, I'm really excited about them. I'm really, really, really excited about them. I think the last month of training on the silks has got me super prepared to be able to go out and have a ton of fun. And right now, it's building, and it's going to be nuking in the gorge all day today. So I'm super hopeful that I will get to have my first session on the 2.4 Pocket Rocket, and I will check back in about that later. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to keep riding. See you at the river.